this heaven? No. It's Iowa.
From high school to international wrestling, on the mat and beyond, this is the Potentially Dangerous podcast with the guys from IA Wrestle.
If you're a fighter, you like a fight. If you're an American, you like a fight. If you're an Iowa Hawkeye, you know you're going to get a fight.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and all your podcast-friendly apps. And follow us on social media platforms at IA Wrestle. Time to strap it up and get to the show. All right, welcome to Potentially Dangerous here. Tony Hager in the house. Thank you for tuning in. Took a couple weeks off, took some time away, went down on a vacation with my wife, so definitely much needed time away. You can get just kind of cooped up in our houses and in our regular daily lives, and a time right now where it seems like every damn thing is going wrong. It's good, and you gotta find the positive. And right now we've got a guy on that has got a lot of positivity going in his with his club out in Dubuque. Pumped to have him on. Mark Schultz joins the program. Thank you for making the time, man. I know that's it's a crazy time for your club right now. You guys are starting back up. You got a new facility, so perfect time to get you on here. So thanks for joining.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me.
So yeah, I mean, the new facility. I saw you guys were, raising money for that. And was that something that you guys, have been wanting to do out there in Dubuque? You were in Loris, right, for a while.
Yep.
And this is just something with COVID that you guys, a lot of clubs are moving to, trying to find these new facilities. How long did it take for you guys to find this spot?
I got kind of lucky. It didn't take that long, actually. Like when this first happened, we were actually in Cedar Rapids, ready to watch Loris at Nationals. We found out, COVID, the tournament got canceled, and then I started getting emails from USA Wrestling, and they're like, hey, we're shutting everything down right now. And I just kind of assumed, like, hey, mid-April, whatever, we'll be back on the mats. A month break for these kids, probably not a bad thing right now. It's a long season. So I didn't really start looking into it much. Well, then all of a sudden it's May, it's June, and, we did those Zoom workouts with a bunch of guys they were really good, but, at some point you got to get back on the mat. So I looked at a couple of facilities in Dubuque, and the cheapest one I could find was like $3-4 grand a month. I'm like, just not feasible. So one day the owner of the company that I work at, who happened to wrestle at Loris College back in the day, was walking by, and I was just like, hey man, do you know any facilities that might work for this? And he happened to have one that he's letting me rent from him for a pretty good price, because he's a wrestling guy, he likes to get back, and it happens to just be a block from our office too, which is super super convenient for me. So after that, it was just a matter of getting it cleaned out and getting some mats in there.
I mean, that's super. I mean, that's a dream, right?
Yeah, it's in Piazza, which is, it's only about 12 miles from Loris, but I mean, you've been in Dubuque. That can be a 35-40 minute drive after work, where everybody's going home from work. So I think it's going to be a good opportunity for us to get some more Piazza, Epworth, Dyersville, Cascade, Monticello, and most of Manchester kids that might not make that drive to Loris because of the time, or they might not be able to get there in time. Because the ultimate plan is, we've had a great relationship with Loris for the last 8 years that I've been helping with the club. So as soon as that opens back up to us, we're going to be back at Loris. Like, Loris will always be our home as long as they're willing to have us there. TJ and Kid have been awesome to work with as far as that goes. So at that point, we'll essentially just run 2 facilities.
Okay.
So this is great for right now, because right now it is our only option. And we're going to be running a ton of different workouts to deal with the space issue, because it's a little bit smaller than Loris. So we're probably going to, once season really gets going full-fledged, we're probably going to have like 10 different practices a week to make it work. But yeah, just kind of got lucky that it worked out the way that it did right now.
So how many kids do you have in the club right now?
Probably about 75, but I'm guessing that number is going to explode a little bit, because a lot of the local clubs might not be able to go this year. With the high schools not wanting to take on that added risk. So if that happens, I'm assuming we're going to get a lot more kids that we haven't had in the past.
And how long have you, the numbers as far as Dubuque Wrestling Club has gone, you've been with the club now for 7, 8 years.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. So where kind of was it when you got into the club? What was was it a small club? Were you already a big club? What has kind of transpired here since you've taken over?
I think it started in 93 or 94. Stu kind of started it, I believe, as just kind of like an open mat for high school kids, in the off season when they couldn't get in the high school rooms with their coaches or whatever. I don't know exactly when the kids club started, but when I jumped in there, there was probably about 20, 25 kids. And then, there was a couple big 8th grade classes. So the year I kind of started taking over, kind of running it more or less, there was probably only about 10 or 12 left. But it happened to be, like Brady Rissman, Abe Hasinger, Landon Gottschalk, like some stud kids that are really easy to build around. So it didn't take long to get more kids in there.
And so now you've got some momentum, and I mentioned this. I had Brett Haas on the show on Hager's Happy Hour, and there's a lot of momentum out in Dubuque right now with Loris. People underestimate, I think, a lot of how important the kids clubs are. So have you seen, obviously this past year was a huge year for Loris, but have you seen kind of in this off season that we really haven't had with COVID, have you seen an uptick of maybe kids wanting to do a little bit more than they were before, like just in season, now out of season?
Yeah, I mean, the Loris thing has been really good for us because we essentially go into practice right as they're finishing up. Some of our kids even get there early and they're like standing in the hallway as the college guys are leaving practice. And, to our kids, guys like Guy Petrone, Brandon Murray, Eddie Smith, they might as well be Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady to these 9 and 10-year-old kids, right? Like they get to see them so often. Guy goes out there and throws people on their heads. Our kids love it. So I think seeing those guys have as much success as they've had, it's made our kids more excited and hungrier to get better. They want to be like those guys.
And so for Loris too, it's kind of a trade-off too. Like they're hoping to kind of get those guys to stay home too. So it's it's a win-win, right?
For sure.
So the program is, in your eyes, is just continuing to improve, and as more kids have success, hopefully that will come over. And I'm curious, so you're just across the river, so you're not an Iowa boy, and you come over here. Have you went to UD, and now your home is Loris, right? What has
Took
been
me a few years to figure it out.
What has been was there much difference in mindset, or just Iowa fans are just crazy, right, at all levels. So, but you came from Glenbard, so that is a high school with lots of tradition as well. What have you seen from Illinois to Iowa?
So funny story. I was down probably about 3-4 years ago at the Illinois State Tournament, watching guys like Austin Gomez, Abe Assad from Glenbard North. And TJ and Kittleson were on their way down, and they were running a little bit late because they were coming from the Iowa State Tournament. And we were going into the semis in Illinois. And Kittleson's like texting me nonstop. He's like, dude, save us a seat. We're going to be there probably like right after the first, match or two. I just laughed because it's not like Iowa. Like, I sent him a picture of the arena. I'm like, dude, we can pick any seat we want. Whereas you go to Iowa and it's like first round and it's hard to find a seat. So, wrestling wise, it's pretty equal. Like Illinois and Iowa, both incredible wrestling states, but the atmosphere in Iowa is so much better than the atmosphere in Illinois.
I've always find that really, I guess, confusing of when I see some of these other states, and some of them have great fan attendance, right? But, for Illinois, who has stud wrestlers, stud high schools, for them not to pack the fans in there, is a difference. I don't know a ton about Illinois, so I might be just off here, but a lot of small towns in Iowa that wrestling is everything, right? And high school sports are everything. So they come and support the high school. I think that's maybe the biggest difference. But is that a fair statement for Illinois or just in these other states of why the difference is, or just the difference in history of the sport in the state?
I think so. I mean, because if you look at like your top programs in Illinois, your Glenbard Nords, Montini, Sandburgs, they're going to bring a lot of fans. And then your small towns like Dakota, right? And Dakota's got a really good team. They're a small town. That town shuts down for the state tournament. But there's not a ton of those. Whereas you look at like Cascade, Iowa, right? Like Aiden Noonan, I think was their only qualifier this year. Half the town went to watch Aiden wrestle.
Yep.
And I think a big difference too is like there's just not as much casual wrestling fans in Illinois. Whereas kind of like once your kid's done, you just don't go anymore. Whereas in Iowa, you get people whose kids might have graduated 15 years ago, but they still haven't missed a state tournament since. Just because it's so ingrained in Iowa with people that's what you do here. You wrestle.
Does it transcend over to like youth wrestling? Because I mean, I know you're in that, the thick of things, from Pee Wee, from Super Pee Wee, through high school. You're seeing these kids. Same mindset at the youth level, or is it crazy over there too?
Youth wrestling's about just as crazy over there.
I mean, it's in lately too in the state of Iowa, big top clubs, right? You're trying to get you've got kids from all over the state, and maybe some of them are driving clear across the state for their club. What's your take on, I guess you call these super clubs, and Dubuque's getting bigger, the Dubuque Wrestling Club's getting bigger, right? So what's your take on some of these super clubs versus maybe like a small hometown club, good, bad, mix of for the sport of wrestling?
So this is probably where I'm different from a lot of what you call club coaches, where I really believe in both of those things existing. So I bet 80 to almost 90% of our kids wrestle for their local youth club, whether it's Hempstead, West Dubuque, Wahlert, Senior, Beckman, Cascade, wherever. Because I think there's a benefit to that, where you take, for instance, Kellen McKenna from West Dubuque, who's really tough. I think by him being in that West Dubuque room, it gives the younger, less experienced kids something to look up to and want to be. But I also think Kellen, a kid like that, needs Abe Hasinger, Landon Gottschalk, Parker Johns, and all these kids as partners as well that he normally wouldn't get there. So what a lot of our kids will do is they'll go to their local club once a week or twice a week, and they'll come by us 2 or 3 times a week. And we're lucky that, the coaches at the Hempstead, West Dubuque, Waller, all the schools throughout the area here have been pretty receptive to it. I think they understand that myself and Coach Kelly and Kaizen aren't the kind of guys who are going up to these kids like, stop going to those places and you only wrestle here. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. But we do want to get those kids involved in our club because we think there's a big benefit to what we're doing also.
And that's where I have a problem with super clubs, or even like on the other flip side of things, of coaches being upset that they're losing their kids, because you should want them to get the toughest competition. Because if they're staying in that room and they're just bored and they're just beating up on everybody, they have to go with coach who's, we've all seen those rooms where you got this stud youth wrestler and the only way he's pushed is to wrestle 150 pound the coach, and it just doesn't work that way. So if there's a way you can do a mixture of them, like maybe there's once a week you go in your local club and then go to Dubuque Wrestling Club, for instance, I think that's a good mix for both parties. Now, are you guys, do you have them say this state wrestling tournament or Rumble on the River, where the hell it might be called, do you have them register as West Dubuque, or do you have them wrestle, under Dubuque Wrestling Club? How do you handle that? Because I know also coaches get upset, if they're wrestling for this club, big name club, and they list their hometown, on the bracket.
Mm-hmm. So personally, I don't care. to me, it's not about that. It's about, if this kid feels more comfortable wearing a Wallert singlet or a Hempstead singlet instead of DWC, or he wants to wear a singlet with a bikini on it, or, a Team Pennsylvania singlet, like, I don't care. Whatever makes you feel good and wrestle better for whatever reason, fine. USA Wrestling's kind of our thing. We're a USA charter club. So USA State and like those big USA events, preseason nationals are kind of the only ones where I'm like, hey guys, let's register for Dubuque Wrestling Club. Let's see how many points we can score. Let's like do that thing. But like AAU State, I tell them, I'm like, you want to wrestle for your school? I get it. Like, you should be proud of your school. And we're lucky, like the kids that are coming to us come from good high school programs or good youth programs. So like, I get it that they want to wrestle for those, and I have a really good relationship with the high school and the club coaches at those schools. So there's never really been an issue. Like, I'm not going to go up to a kid and say, why the hell are you wearing a Cascade singlet at this tournament? Like, I don't care. I don't think that's what it should be about. I think it should be about getting kids better at wrestling and what singlet they have on. Like, people know where they're from. Whether West Dubuque, they know if they wrestle with us. Like, to me, I don't think they need to plaster it on themselves. That's just how I've always kind of looked at it.
And I understand from, the big clubs, this is their livelihood too. So, and if they're going for that trophy, right? And, they're blasting, the name out of blah, blah, blah at the AAU state tournament. A lot of people have had that Wells Fargo Arena. So you hear those names, you're like, oh, should I go wrestle for that club?
Right.
And it's good for both sides. So it's an interesting topic, and because some coaches are over here and some coaches over here of you got to do this or do that. I'm just a big believer in if you tell a kid, hey, you got to do this, otherwise you're out of my club, that's when I have an issue with it, because then it's not really about the kid. It's about, the club. You're still getting paid probably, right? But, I mean, it is what it is, I guess. So this year I mic'd you up. I mic'd you up at the AAU State Tournament, and we did some other things with some clubs and whatnot. And when was the last tournament you were at? Was that the last big tournament you were able to coach at?
Yeah, I would say it was probably AAU State would have been the last one. Because we were gearing up, so we're kind of in a different situation here too, where we're right on the border by Wisconsin. So we finished up AAU State, and we were starting to get ready to prepare our Wisconsin kids for their state series, because their regionals aren't till like this year. Their regionals were like March 23rd, and state was like March 30th. So we always have like an awkward month in there where our Iowa guys are ready to start doing freestyle Greco, but our Wisconsin guys are still doing folk style. So we almost like kind of split practice. And then when we're going live, it's like, hey, if you're wrestling a Wisconsin kid, you got to keep wrestling folk style. If it's two Iowa kids wrestling each other, like, go ahead and start, throwing each other around and hitting gut wrenches. So that was really strange for us this year, is we didn't know, because when it first came out, like I said, we were at nationals. We're like, all right, whatever. Maybe it's like a 2-week thing, and we're going to wrestle with, like, we had no clue it was going to last until, hell, we still know how long it's going to last. So it was definitely a curveball, to say the least.
How have you stayed connected with your kids? You said Zoom, right?
We did a lot of Zoom workouts, which was cool. Like, especially like a lot of, with another benefit of being at Loris is I'm good friends with TJ Miller, Trevor Kittleson, all those coaches. And, I'm around them enough, and I'm hanging out outside before practice, whatever, getting our kids ready to get in there. So I've got to know a lot of the wrestlers really well too. So one really cool thing about Loris again is we have access to Brandon Murray, Guy Petrone, Clint Lembeck, all these guys, Eddie Smith, where I can call Guy and be like, hey, can you do a Zoom workout for our kids? And it's like, it's just an easy text. Like, I know them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty easy to set those up. And then even your big name guys, like really big, like Jaden Cox, right? Like world champ, we got him on, and he was so cool about it. He's like, I told him, I'm like, we don't really have any money coming in right now. Like, I'll pay you out of my pocket. So he made it really affordable. Like, for a guy like that who easily could have charged like $500 to $1,000 to do that, and he could probably get it. he did it really reasonably. He's like, man, it's more about money. It's about more than money. It's more about, keeping these kids involved. And we had, Nathan Tomasello was on, RBY was on, Nazar Kolchinsky, Matt McDonough, like some pretty tough dudes who were just willing to help out. I think wrestling's a weird sport like that where people just want to get back to it. Like, I feel like you don't see that in other sports as much.
No. I mean, spending time out of their day, like you said, they could get paid money. That's also a downside to our sport too, but
right.
for some of these guys.
You're almost too giving at times.
Yeah. What do you think has been during COVID for you as a coach, club coach? What has been the thing that you've had to adapt to the most, or I guess what has been a positive for you that you've taken away that now you'd be grateful for, I guess, that you didn't do before as a coach?
A positive for me is I've had more time to spend with my family and get my wife's list done and finish the bathroom in the basement she wanted done. So I guess that might be more of a positive for her than me.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was nice to take a little break, but honestly, after a few weeks, it's been killing me to not be in there. Like, that's what I do. I love wrestling. If I won the lotto tomorrow, we'd build a $5 million facility and I'd coach all day for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what I want to do. But the Zoom things it was a different way to connect with the kids, and it was cool to see how many of them got on there and wanted to stay involved. I think it gave us an opportunity to find a way to hold the kids more accountable and teach them that, hey, sometimes life sucks and it doesn't go the way it's supposed to go. And how are you going to take it upon yourself to continue getting better? Are you sitting on the couch eating chips and playing Fortnite all day? Or are you going out for a run on your own? And a lot of our kids have mats in their basement, which is great. But even if you don't, you can stance in motion and do stuff on carpet or even hardwood. So I think it was you got to turn a negative situation into a positive, right? So it forced them to become more responsible for their own training, which will come into effect in the winter, right? What if we get a blizzard and we can't practice for 2-3 days or whatever? Well, figure it out, right? Like, do 200 do something. Without a coach having to tell you?
Yeah. What were some activities you had them do that, maybe there's a coach right now or a dad or a mom just can't get their kid motivated again. What were some things that you could pass along that they could be doing at home right now where they don't have a practice partner, they don't have a mat in the room?
I would just say, the easiest thing. So like a lot of the guys we had on the Zooms, I said, probably the majority of our kids don't have a partner, don't have a wrestling room. So let's find some things that they can do on their own. And a lot of just stance in motion, or for kids, fill empty milk gallons with water and do curls, do like shoulder presses, do anything to get your heart rate up. It doesn't have to be, some crazy workout where you can't get off the floor after. You can go for a mile run and do stance in motion for 15 minutes, hit some push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups, and you can make it a decent workout. Or, you can half-ass it too and not break much of a sweat. There's a difference, right, between running a 15-minute mile and an 8-minute mile. Like, you're going to get out of it what you put into it. But, I think we're lucky that we have a group of pretty good kids who are motivated and have parents that are pretty involved. So, on those Zoom calls, we were getting 30 to 40 kids on each one, which I was pretty happy about. It could have easily been 8 kids only.
Mm-hmm. So I look at this as you see a completely different side of these kids, and you as a coach too, because most of the time I imagine you're focused on, hey, this is our practice plan. We're going to work on these things that I saw at the tournament. And now you can't really do those things. So
right.
You talk about the milk jugs and those workouts. Has there been anything that Jaden Cox or NATO and these guys have brought into for the mental side of things that I guess simplest thing is writing goals down? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, Jaden Cox, I actually as good of a wrestler as he is, I asked him not to even put him through a workout because I've heard him talk 2 or 3 times in the past at a camp and just like a couple things on floor or whatever. And like he's got a really different mental approach to wrestling. So I asked him, I said, I don't even care if it's just 30 minutes. And I think he ended up going almost an hour. I was like, I'd just like you to talk to the kids about, the mental aspect of wrestling. And some of the things he said, I think lined up really well with what we try and tell our kids. Is his big thing was like, I don't go out there to win matches. He goes, I go out there to wrestle the best possible match I can. He goes, when you start thinking only about wins and losses, you'll shut yourself down sometimes. Like sometimes you'd be so worried about winning or so worried about losing that you don't wrestle your best. And some of his big things were, if you just worry about wrestling the best you possibly can, you're probably going to win most of those matches, right? Like if you go out there and you get some of these parents or coaches or whatever, you've all seen them at tournaments where they're like, hey, this kid's got a great single leg, don't let him get it. And now the kid's out there wrestling just like, well, I'm not going to get single leg. Now you're not wrestling to win. You're wrestling to all of a sudden you're changing your stance because this kid's got a good single leg. Like, who cares? Wrestle your match in the way you wrestle and things will take care of themselves, right? Like, you start wrestling not to lose instead of wrestling to win, and that's when, you start getting into some trouble. And that was what Cox said, that, and, his big thing was he talked a lot about weight cutting and how he never really did it and how he doesn't think kids should do it, which is another thing we kind of preach. I don't really like any of our kids to lose more than a pound or two. I just, you get to high school, it gets a little different. You got to start, eating healthier, weight management stuff. But at the youth level, to me, it's like a fourth grader. If you take fourth at state at 85 pounds and you could have took it second at 80, I don't know. What's the trade-off there?
Mm-hmm.
In 4 or 5 years after cutting that weight, do you hate wrestling and now it doesn't matter that you got second or first 3 or 4 times? So there's just a lot of moving parts in wrestling, especially youth wrestling.
Did you cut a lot of weight?
I did. And I think that's part of the reason I'm really against it. I like, even in college, I'd probably walk into practice 155, 156 on Monday, and I wrestled 133. And it was stupid. And I didn't cut weight the right way. So I think that's part of where I'm coming from on that is, and I never burned out from it per se. Like, I never hated the sport of wrestling from it, but I also probably didn't wrestle to the best of my ability because of it.
Do you see kids wanting to cut weight like that? Our sport has changed a lot in 5-10 years. So do you see parents and say, hey, what do you think about in that situation, 85 to 80? Is a lot of that going on, or are we seeing more of that mindset change to where these kids and coaches and parents, I guess, are realizing like we really don't need to do that? Because heck, in the 80s and the 90s for me, it was like, you go down 10 pounds, I'm in 7th grade,
Right.
and you wanted to, like, my dad never told me to do that, but it was like, is that mindset that you could be stronger, faster, leaner, but that it's completely changed. And I'm happy to hear that some of it may be changing.
Yeah, I think back then it was almost like it was glorified back then. Like, it made you tougher, right? Like you cut weight. That's what the Iowa guys did. That's what the Oklahoma State guys did. So like people saw that. But now I think there's been a big shift. Like, you take a guy like Kyle Dake, who's like, dude, I'm not cutting weight. I'm going up every year and I'm still going to win a national title. And he's the biggest name in our sport at the time. David Taylor goes up weights. David Taylor decides to go up to, whatever 86 kilos is and win a world title. So I think a lot of people are seeing it from the top guys now, where they're saying like, dude, I don't cut weight. I just wrestle. I get in the weight room. I condition myself. I do all this stuff. So, I mean, it does still happen, I'm sure, around the state, around the country. There's still some probably parents out there who are like, no, you're getting from 90 to 80. Like, that's never going to change, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think it probably happens a lot less, where we've had some kids lose 4 or 5 pounds, but it's, hey, dude, we're going to start eating chicken breast and brown rice and broccoli for dinner instead of pasta and pizza, and you're only going to drink water, and you might do an extra run each night. You're not going to school in a garbage bag. Like, a lot of us probably used to do,
Oh, yeah.
like running during gym class with plastics on. Like even the kids who are like, I don't even like calling it cutting weight anymore. It's weight management. It's dieting, it's weight management. Like I'm against cutting weight, but I'm fine with a kid. So we had Mitchell Murphy this year who wanted to go down to, I think it was 80. And I was like, he's like, and his dad's like, no, here's what he's been eating. And he made it fine. He never skipped a meal. He might not have ate dinner but before weigh-ins at state or whatever, but ate dinner after. Like he wasn't skipping meals. He wasn't running with plastics on. He did it the right way and he was fine.
Another one, a topic that, I mean, as a parent, I got a boy coming up, and I'm just always curious on everyone's thought process on this is when and how many matches do you limit? Hey, your kids can only wrestle a certain amount of matches a year. Are you picking certain tournaments that you want your guys to go to, or can they go to whatever? Because there's more tournaments than there ever has been in the sport of wrestling. There's big tournaments. The little high school tournaments, unfortunately, are getting drowned out because of them.
Yeah.
It's better competition, but there's a lot more of those, and I guess sexier, big trophies, the belts, the rings, all this stuff,
trophies and
yeah.
So I've changed my mind on this a lot over the years. I think when I first started coaching, I was fresh out of college and I was still in like competition mode where I'm like, no, we're wrestling every weekend. Like we're out for blood, right? Like that's just, I was 22 years old. That's all I ever knew, wrestling for Gomez Wrestling Academy and Glenbard North. Like I was always just really competitive, where now, I start to see it almost as less is more for some kids, and I think what you need to do as a coach is take every kid for who every kid is. Some kids can wrestle 100 matches a year and they absolutely love it. Some kids hit 30 matches and they're burnout and they don't want to wrestle by the time the state series is there. So like one of our guys from Wisconsin, Shane Rashawn, he could wrestle 300 matches a year and he'd ask for more. That's just who he is. He loves it. But we have kids who, maybe they hit 40 matches and that's kind of good for them. And, or you get some of these beginner kids, right, who don't even really know how to wrestle yet. And I'm starting to gear more towards, if you're a first or second year kid, what's the point of wrestling 70 matches? You'd be better off doing an hour and a half practice on Sunday and wrestling for an hour and a half than going to a tournament where you might only wrestle 5 minutes, but you're there for 10 hours. Like that sucks for an 8-year-old kid, and whether you win those 3 matches or lose them, it's like, dude, you're there all day. It costs your parents how much money, and you don't get a lot of mat time out of it. Or you can come to, I think we're going to start doing that this year, 2-3 Sundays a month. We're going to have practice for an hour and a half. And if you'd rather go to a tournament, fine. Like, but if you just want to come wrestle, I don't see the huge benefit of 100 matches. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I don't think there's a need to push for it either. So as far as our tournament schedule, I send a schedule every year with like, these are the tournaments we're kind of going to go to as a team. And a lot of them are the West Dubuque tournament, the Hempstead tournament, the Cascade tournament, because those guys support us and they push their wrestlers to be with us. So I think we need to support them back. I think that's important to keep that relationship we have with them. And then there's the Bettendorf Bi-State. That's just a really tough tournament. The Prairie tournament is a really good one. We try and take a trip to Chicago and hit a Gomez or a tournament out there every year, just to see some different kids and stuff like that. But, even if the kids don't want to go to those, like we have kids that'll go to different tournaments every weekend. Like I try not to make anything mandatory. Like to me, if this kid wants to go to this tournament because they're giving out a freaking tomahawk axe instead of a medal, and that's what gets him hyped to wrestle, then go get you a tomahawk axe, dude. Yeah. Like whatever, or a lot of these tournaments, we're so log jammed at a couple weights where you look from like 58 to 65 pounds. We've just got like 7 or 8 studs in there. Well, what's the point of going to a tournament every weekend? We're going to wrestle each other. 4-man brackets, 3 of them are our guys. Let's do that in the room for free. So there's just a lot of moving parts with it where I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's just, some parents can't afford to go to Tulsa Reno, Virginia Beach. Like, if you can, good for you. If your kid wants to do it and you can afford it, hell, more power to you, because those are great tournaments. But I don't think a kid's going to not be a state champ in high school because he didn't go to them.
What's one part of youth wrestling that you think maybe we're missing? And that could be from a club dual tournament to all-star event like we do with Night of Conflict, to girls only tournaments, to Greco tournaments. What's one thing that you wish we had?
Duels. I think we need to do a lot more duels. Our kid, like, we hosted one this year. We had a Gogi, DC Elite, big game crew brought a club down, team from Wisconsin, Ringers brought a club, and the kids love it. And I think the parents enjoy it too, because, you go to an individual tournament, you might sit there for an hour. We're not only your kids not wrestling, but nobody from our club's wrestling. Where you're in a duel, one, our kids absolutely go nuts, like coaching each other and cheering each other on. Like, they live for it. Like the ISI camp, they absolutely love it. Like, I don't even coach at that thing because they take care of it. I just kind of sit back in the corner and watch. But it's exciting for them. And I think it does a really good job. Like, me and Carew and Trezino talked about this a lot when we were setting the dual tournament up, is it prepares them for high school, right? Now we're starting to put an emphasis on, you're up by 7, you got to get a takedown to get that extra team point, or you're down by 14, like, you can't give up that last point or you can't get pinned. Like, so now you go to a dual tournament, and we had this situation happen where we were in a tight duel with one of those clubs, and we had a kid lose like 14-2 to some stud. And he comes out to mat, I give him a big high five, and he kind of like, why are you excited? I just lost 14-2. It's like, dude, you saved us 2 team points.
Yeah.
You end up winning that duel by 1 or 2, and that's a huge deal. Like, you don't have to win every match to do your job sometimes, which is another weird thing about wrestling. Like, in basketball, you either put the ball in the hoop or you don't, right? Like, wrestling, sometimes losing by 6 is a win.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's what I believe we're missing the most too, is preparing them for those situations where, just like you said, down 14-2, hold on that leg to not give up the tech, because it prepares them for that time that they might get the lineup at the high school level where they need you not to give up the major, right? Or to push yourself to go get more points for your team.
Right.
How would you like to see it structured? Because you are a club that has multiple towns, maybe some kids from not even the Dubuque area. Would you like to see it as maybe like a super club division, and then maybe like a small town division, or like maybe like one day? Well, I'll wait to hear you say. What are your thoughts on that?
So that would be the tricky part for us. Because I would like to see it at the youth level with the local school clubs, because I think it's cool to see those guys compete against each other. But at the same time, that would kill us if they did it on the same weekend, because we'd lose most of our kids. Because I just the way I am, I wouldn't put our kids in a position where they had to choose one. I would say, if you want to wrestle for your school, I'm not going to stop you. It's just not who I am. So it'd be cool if it was separate weekends or at least separate days. But one of the things I really miss from Illinois is they do a dual team state tournament just like the high school. Your top 2 teams from sectionals out there qualify, and they run a 16 team dual tournament, state tournament, exact same format as a high school. And it's cool, man. It's bragging rights. It's good competition. At the end of the day, I don't think like winning that tournament is the end all be all, but it is fun to see where you're at too. Like, it's fun to test yourself. It's nice to go out there and battle with some really good teams. I'm not going to go to practice on Monday and start ripping kids' heads off and freaking out if we go to that tournament and we take 8th. But yeah, I mean, we're all competitors. We want to win it too. It's just a balance of how much stock you put into it, I guess. But
what it also does, those duels for me, is it creates a camaraderie with your teammates too, where you go to an individual tournament. Yeah, it's a tournament, but
right.
Like, now when you're in the room, maybe you weren't as close as the other kid on the other side of the room, but now you are, and it creates that team. And then, maybe you see less kids maybe transferring out, and you stick as a team. You see that in other sports besides wrestling is the teams that have stayed together and gone to the youth baseball games together. Those teams that stay together have successful high school teams. So that is something. Is there anything out there right now? I know that Legends of Gold did something like that in all three styles, but is there a spot missing where, say, okay, IRSL needs to fill a void to do something like that, or are there smaller tournaments trying to do this right now?
There's been some throughout the state. One of the Cedar Rapids schools runs one same weekend as USA State. That's more beginner based. Like, you're not allowed to be on the dual team if you've placed at USA State or you've qualified for AAU. So I think that's a good one for schools or clubs that don't have a ton of kids going to the state right now, or your smaller local clubs. Because again, you look at a school like West Dubuque, right? They have like 100 kids in their youth club, so they might have 25, 30 kids qualify for AAU state, but they still got 70 other kids that they can take a team to that dual tournament with. I personally, I would go to a dual tournament at least once or twice a month if they were that readily available. I don't know. I really like dual tournaments. It creates a lot of, like, for me. Okay, let's say me and you are the same weight, right? And you're better than me. I mean, I'm motivated to get better, but when you add in like this whole dual thing where we're gonna have wrestle-offs, right? That's the only fair way to pick your team. I'm not gonna say, your dad's a Cubs fan, you're on the team, your dad's a Cardinal fan. I don't even know why you're in the club, right? Because nobody likes the Cardinals. Yeah. But now it's, hey, we're gonna have a wrestle-off. That's a little extra motivator for me at practice to get better. Like, I want to be on the dual team. I don't want to be the guy who goes to this tournament because I didn't make the dual team. It's just a little extra thing. Like, now that we have this new facility, I'm going to get banners of all of our state champs made, and I'm going to hang them in the gym. Because now every day when I walk into the gym, I want my banner up there. It's just a little added thing to that might motivate a kid to work a little harder, or maybe, be more consistent in coming to practice, or whatever the case is. Like, I want to be that guy on the team. I want to be the kid who's every day when you walk in the room, you see that he's a state champ up there on the wall.
Why do you think there isn't many dual tournaments? Is it revenue as far as, like, if you're a tournament director? Is it because there's not as much revenue from those individual, or there's not as many numbers in the tournament? Or is it the difficulty of finding full teams? What's the issue?
I think revenue can play a big part. Honestly, I don't think it's that hard to find teams. I guess it's hard to say that. We're pretty gifted out here in this area, where, we're in Dubuque, Cedar Rapids, Davenport, Iowa City area. It was pretty easy for us to get teams. We're an hour and a half from Madison. So, certain areas it might be harder to get teams. We're kind of in a pretty hotbed of wrestling in the area out here. So for me, it wasn't difficult. But I also think you could do an individual tournament on Saturday and a dual tournament on Sunday. I think you could combine the events and say, it's $15 a kid for the individual tournament, and if you're on a dual team, it's only $5 more, or whatever. If because a lot of those schools that run tournaments, it's their big fundraiser. So yeah. Money's, you never want to make wrestling about money, but sometimes you have to, right? Because that's how your club survives. Is you need money.
Yeah, money's not growing on trees in the wrestling world.
But personally, I think logistically, I don't think I would ever want to run an individual tournament. I mean, I would, but I'd do a dual tournament every time. Yeah. Because that tournament was the first tournament I've kind of ever run. Again, we're lucky. We used Loris's facility. They've got mats. We ran it the day after one of their opens, so we didn't even have to set the mats up. So just that side of it was easy for me. But again, it's like a dual tournament, A and B, you wrestle, C and D, you wrestle. And then you don't have to do anything until those duels are over. Okay, now A and C, B and D. Like, it's just so much easier. With track wrestling, they've made individual tournaments a lot easier, but I don't think it gets much easier than saying, hey, your team wrestles this team. Let me know when you're done. Tell me who won.
Yeah. Yeah, duels are easier, from my opinion, from who people I've worked with, that run the tournaments. Yeah.
Like, you think about it. So we actually I bet we took about 12 to 15 kids to Wartburg this year, right? And if you're on the fence about wrestling and you went to the Wartburg Loris duel and you're not like nuts about wrestling now, like, I don't know, you don't have a heartbeat or a pulse. Like, that atmosphere was insane. Loris beats Wartburg first time in 27 years. It's Jim Miller's kid, TJ, who gets it done. Like that that's the stuff they make like E60s about, right?
Yeah.
Like if you were there, I mean, I couldn't talk for 3 days after that duel. Like, my kid, like, I drove 4 of our DWC kids down with me and my wife, and like, they did not stop talking about the entire ride. First thing they're talking about at practice, like, dude, guy pinned that guy. There was time left. Like, they were so excited about it. I just feel like that doesn't happen at the individual tournaments besides maybe NCAs, maybe. Like, and that's just a dual meet.
Yeah, just one dual meet.
Even the Loris UD duel, where it's been, I don't think UD's won a match in 3 years. Even that duel is just loud and it's hostile because, across town don't really like each other. Like, to me, nothing can replace duels for me. I absolutely love duels.
Who wins this year, Loris or Wartburg?
Loris.
Oh, okay. That duel was super fun. I like seeing that. I like seeing Wartburg. I would say they're gonna, they don't want to feel that again. We had Wartburg coaches in here. They don't want to have that happen again, and it is what it is. But it's good. It's good to have those rivalries. And have. I mean, Iowa, we're freaking blessed of how many colleges we have in the state and how good we are, right? I mean, we're very, very lucky, and that's probably how crazy, our fans are, is we have success at all levels. I do feel like we have a ways to go, but as far as our high school talent goes, but that will come. I do think that we're on some right steps of getting back to where we were at one time. But all right, so you already called Loris Wartburg, and so that so you're out there, and right now, fans, people that are watching this right now, I want you to kind of chime in right now too, because Russell, we're trying to find a way to do Night of Conflict. Obviously, with everything with with COVID and everything, and putting them on campuses is really tough. That's what we normally do. We're looking at maybe Dubuque. Dubuque is coming hard. I mean, I'm getting texts, I'm getting tweets. The fan base out there is borderline kind of weirding me out, but it's good stuff. I love it. We're thinking about going out there. So if you had an opportunity, you said, okay, Tony, you got to go to this place. Where are you putting the duel at? That's going to create, you can't do it on Loris campus. Where's the place in Dubuque that's going to create that atmosphere where people are going to be crazy? Because there's a couple good ones that I've been getting kind of fed to.
I'm a big Five Flags fan. I like the way it's set up, especially if you put the lower bleachers out. It can get pretty loud in there pretty quick. It's almost got it's a little bit bigger, but it's almost got like that West Gym feel when everybody's kind of on top of each other.
Yep.
And it's just, I mean, it's nicely located. There's hotels, there's restaurants, there's bars. And, like Loris has hosted the regional tournament there the last, 6, 7, 8 years now. I really like that venue.
Is Five Flags the one with the water slide?
That's the Grand Harbor.
Is there a water park there?
Yeah, that's Grand Harbor. It's probably like 2 miles away. That'd be another cool place though.
Yeah, there's a casino. There's a casino in Dubuque too, right? There's a
casino right across the street from it. There's 2 casinos in Dubuque. Yeah.
Okay.
The Steve, or they changed the name to Q and then Diamond Joe.
I know a little bit about Dubuque, but so yeah, if you're watching right now, if you've got a place you want to see Night of Conflict, drop him in the comment section. If you got a question for Coach Schultz, or if you want to give him just a shout out, here's an opportunity. Do a comment in the comment section. I'm seeing them on here, so appreciate that. So hopefully we'll have something locked down. I got some meetings figured out here where we're gonna try to get this done. If you're a wrestler watching this and you're wanting to get in the event, please send us a tweet. Obviously, we're not gonna be able to get all of them in, but one thing too that we're gonna do, talking about all this youth wrestling, is we're gonna I'm gonna try to get some youth matches in there to get them that experience. I was kind of against it at first, but getting them that experience will be fun, and maybe we'll have something to announce here if we can make something happen on the individual and dual tournament side of things. So, Coach Schultz, I know you're talking about your wife and getting the to-do list done, and you just welcomed a baby into the life. I mean, what into the world? What was that experience like for you? I mean, during COVID too, nonetheless. This last couple of weeks.
It was actually really weird because I say this in the nicest way possible, but my wife is nuts. Like she is full blown like supportive of wrestling. Like she loves it. Like before we had kids, she used to get like a USA Wrestling card so she could come to like preseason nationals and get on the floor, and she would just follow me around like, hey, this kid's on deck, mat 6. This kid's in the hole, mat 12. Like that's all she would do. So I actually didn't even go with her when she had the baby. Her sister really wanted to go. She's really into that with school and stuff. And my wife was like, you got to get the gym cleaned out. Like, you got to get that thing ready to go so you guys can start practicing. And I'm like,
wow.
Like, this kind of feels like a setup, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, oh, no, I'm like, you're having a baby. Like, I should be there. She's like, you've already done 2 of them. It's not really your thing. She really wants to go. And, like, I think partially, like, having me at home this much, she's like, it was also like a subtle jab, like you need to get back in the wrestling room. Like,
get off the couch.
It's like, so it's like my daughter was born, but I didn't meet her for 2 days.
Wow.
So it was strange, but I mean that's just how my wife is, and it's made this whole wrestling thing easier for me because you probably got some wives out there, even coaches' wives, that just nag you and bug you while you're gone all the time. Where she's on board and she can't wait to start going to tournaments again and not having 3 kids to lug around. Like she's excited to go watch our 2 boys wrestle. She just loves it. After
the first kid, it's like, we're good to go.
Right.
We had ours on Tuesday of the state wrestling tournament. And obviously, I mean, I'm not wrestling it or coaching it, but have a few things to do at the state wrestling tournament. And she did the same thing. Like, you could be in, this is before COVID though too, or right around when it was kind of coming. And she said, see the baby and you just go do your thing. And it was tough. It was tough, but in this sport, you do have to have a little crazy in your wife too, right? Yeah. I mean, and that's one thing too that a lot of parents understand too and they need to understand is respecting your club coaches, respecting your high school coaches, because the coaches a lot of times are getting paid $3,000 a season. They're spending every single night with your kid and the weekends, and I just hate to hear when parents are just ruthless to these coaches about maybe not giving enough time. But so the wives and girlfriends definitely deserve more shouts than they do, right?
Sure. Yeah, and we're lucky. We have a really, really good group of parents who, me and my wife, we hang out with a lot of them. They hang out together. We just have a really good thing going right now with our kids, their families, my family. Like, we recently moved to Cascade, and it's hard for my wife to watch 3 kids at a time, or even my 2 kids. Like, they're psychos, man. They're 4 and 2. They try and kill each other every day. And like these Cascade parents is like, hey, what time you want my kid? What time you want my older daughter to come over and watch your kids for a little bit so your wife can, take a bath or read a book or whatever. Like, have some time to keep her own sanity. Well, she does. She lets me go to all these tournaments, doing this gym, and then it's like the Loris thing, right? Like, I'm a huge Loris fan, so I'm following them around too. Like, I'm going to Roanoke, Virginia to watch them wrestle at nationals. Like, I'm going to. So it doesn't even just end with the club. I'm going to the high school state tournament because a lot of these guys wrestled for us, so I want to go watch them too. Like, I'm not coaching them, but I want to go watch those guys compete. And she was more pissed this year that she couldn't go to state with me than she ever would have been for me just leaving again for another weekend.
Yeah, Cascade had quite the finish.
Yeah, that Noonan guy's pretty tough on top.
So I want to end the interview with this is it takes an army, right, to put these things together. And I know you were just trying to you raise like 10 grand, right? That was the goal, to raise for the facilities. But who are some of the other coaches, that obviously I can't have them all on the show, and but at the same time, but who are some of the other coaches that are been real supportive from when you got there to now, and keep I guess keeping track of all these damn kids at the state tournament?
Right. So Darren Kaisen's been huge. He started helping us out about 4 years ago. He was actually one of my coaches. He did a grad assistant year at UD. We were in each other's wedding, so I'm really good friends with him. It was huge getting him involved. Will Kelly's been incredible. I've been around a lot of really good coaches in the sport, and I haven't met a lot of technicians better than Will Kelly. Like, that guy is just one of those people, like a John Aurelian, who's just kind of like a technique encyclopedia. But even just the local coaches in our area, the Clearys, the Fellies, Allens, Hostas, Conleys, Travis Andrews over at Cascade, they've just all been awesome to work with. And, I think there's just a mutual respect there. We're like, we're not trying to steal their kids. We're not trying to take credit for their kids. It's just we're working together to build the best wrestling in the area we can. Rip over at Bellevue, he's been incredibly supportive too. I'm probably missing some people, and I feel bad, but
I put you on the spot. You didn't create a list. It's all good. And what's your hope for the Dubuque area, for your wrestling club, going forward here? What's a goal for you, or what's the plan? 3-year plan for you? Is it a number?
I think the end goal for me is the high school level. Like, it's weird to say because I'm a youth coach. I want our kids to win youth state titles, but it's not the end goal. I want those kids going to their high schools and winning state titles and then going to wrestle in college. Like, to me as a club, if you've got 55 AAU state champs and 2 kids wrestling in college, is that better than having 15 AAU state champs and 15 kids wrestling in college, right? Like, the end goal is the older you get. Like, yeah, it's great to win at the youth level. We want to win. Everybody wants to win, but the goal is to prepare them for high school and college is kind of the final goal, I guess. Like, to me, if Hempstead Senior and West Dubuque were battling it out every year for the team state title in 3A, right? They're taking first, second, and third. And, Cascade, Bellevue are battling out, and Waller's, like, that's the goal, is just building wrestling in the area to the point where when you think of Iowa wrestling, you think of the Dubuque area.
Yep.
And those schools have done a really good job. Like, there's been some really good kids and really good teams that come out of those schools the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years. So it's, it makes our job easier. It's not like we're working with some programs who, there's coaches out there who just don't care, right? They're collecting the extra $1,500. We don't have to work with anybody like that. So it makes our job a lot easier. These guys are all in on wrestling. Like, if you ever talked to Paul Clary about wrestling, like, that guy's about as intense as it gets. He loves it. Like, you see Haas at all these tournaments. Allen's running these camps everywhere. It's just all these guys in this area just kind of seems like they have the same goal in mind. Like, so it makes it easy.
I love it, man. I appreciate what you guys are doing out there. Congrats on the new facility. Dubuque, it's old Haas. You don't, when you think of Dubuque, you don't think of wrestling, but recently that mindset is changing, though, right?
For sure.
You think of churches, you think of hills.
There's a lot of those.
And it's a beautiful country out there. So appreciate you. Appreciate our listeners watching, and I'm sure there's a lot of Dubuque Wrestling Club wrestlers out there watching, so I appreciate you guys. So thanks again for coming on the show. Congratulations on the new baby.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
All right, that's been another episode of Potentially Dangerous. You can go back and listen to this anytime on Facebook at facebook.com/IWrestle. We've got it on our Rockfin channel. Hopefully this went up on Periscope as well. And next week we've got a huge guest coming in, Austin Gomez. He's been going through a lot of stuff, and I haven't really been able to sit down with him and discuss what he's been going through. Talk about a kid that has had, riding a huge high going into college, and then just injury after injury. His father just got out of the hospital. with COVID. So he's dealing with, home life as well. He's coming back and trying to get his weight down a little bit. So there's lots to talk about. So we'll have Austin Gomez coming in next week. And then the week following that, I believe we've got Rachel Waters from William Penn coming in. So pretty pumped for our next couple of guests. So stay tuned to that, and stay tuned to our Night of Conflict. We're going to be hopefully having getting some things locked down as soon as possible. If you've got a venue that you want us to come to, hit us in the comment section. If you got a match you want to see, hit us in the comment section. All that stuff helps us just put on a better show for you guys, and hopefully everybody stay safe out there. So again, for everybody I wrestle, thanks for watching.